What if the confusion you're trying so hard to escape is actually proof that your old life is ending? And what if ignoring these next 5 signs could make you miss the biggest transformation of your life? Most people mistake these experiences for stress, bad luck, or emotional instability. But those who understand the hidden language of the mind recognize them as signals that something extraordinary is already unfolding beneath the surface. Stay until the end, because the 5th sign surprises almost everyone, and it changes the way you see your entire journey. Have you ever experienced strange coincidences, vivid dreams, or the feeling that life is quietly preparing you for something you cannot yet explain? Write "I'm ready" in the comments if you've sensed that something is changing inside you, even if you can't put it into words. And as you listen, notice how many of these signs are already present in your own life. There comes a quiet moment in every profound transformation when the life that once felt familiar begins to feel strangely distant. Nothing on the outside may have changed. You may still wake up in the same room, drive the same roads, speak with the same people, and follow the same routines, yet beneath the surface, something no longer fits. It is as though an invisible thread connecting you to your old way of living has slowly begun to unravel. Many people mistake this feeling for boredom, laziness, or dissatisfaction, but it often reflects something much deeper. The inner world has started evolving beyond the identity that once provided comfort and certainty. The human mind naturally seeks stability. It builds habits, beliefs, and expectations that create a sense of order. Over time, these patterns become so familiar that they begin to define who we believe we are. But genuine psychological growth demands more than adding new experiences to an existing identity. It asks whether that identity still reflects the person you are becoming. When the answer is no, the unconscious begins withdrawing energy from the roles, ambitions, and routines that no longer align with your deeper nature. What once inspired enthusiasm now feels empty, and achievements that once seemed essential lose much of their emotional significance. This stage can be unsettling because the conscious mind prefers clear explanations. It searches for external reasons, believing that a different job, a new relationship, or another environment will restore the sense of fulfillment that has quietly faded. Yet the real shift is often internal. You are not simply losing interest in certain parts of your life. You are becoming aware that the version of yourself who once needed them is gradually disappearing. Growth does not always arrive with excitement or confidence. Sometimes it first appears as discomfort, uncertainty, and the realization that familiar paths no longer lead where your spirit longs to go. Although this experience can feel lonely, it is often the first unmistakable sign that your inner world is preparing you for a reality your former self could never have imagined. There are moments in life when ordinary events begin to feel strangely connected. You think about someone you have not spoken to in years, and they suddenly contact you. A particular phrase appears repeatedly in conversations, books, and videos within the same week. You notice recurring numbers, familiar symbols, or unexpected opportunities emerging from directions you never anticipated. Most people dismiss these experiences as mere coincidence because the rational mind prefers explanations that are predictable and measurable. Yet there are times when these meaningful patterns deserve closer attention, not because they predict the future, but because they reveal that your awareness is changing. The mind constantly filters enormous amounts of information, allowing only a small portion to reach conscious awareness. During periods of significant inner transformation, that filter begins to shift. You become more sensitive to connections that previously passed unnoticed. Events that once seemed unrelated suddenly form a larger pattern, encouraging you to pause instead of moving through life on autopilot. These moments invite reflection rather than immediate explanation. They encourage you to ask why certain themes continue appearing instead of assuming they hold no significance. This heightened awareness often develops because the unconscious is becoming more active. Thoughts, memories, emotions, and symbols that remained hidden beneath everyday consciousness begin moving toward the surface. As this happens, your perception of the world subtly changes. You become more attentive to conversations, encounters, dreams, and unexpected opportunities that mirror questions already forming within you. It can feel as though life is responding to your inner state, when in reality, your inner state is allowing you to perceive meaning that was always present but previously ignored. Many people become uncomfortable with these experiences because they challenge the belief that everything must be explained immediately. They search for certainty instead of observation. Yet transformation rarely begins with complete understanding. It often begins with curiosity. The appearance of meaningful coincidences reminds you to slow down, remain present, and recognize that not every important message arrives through logic alone. Sometimes the deepest insights emerge through patterns that quietly repeat until your attention is finally ready to receive them. One of the clearest signs that a major transformation is approaching is the quiet collapse of old patterns that once seemed impossible to escape. At first, this can feel unsettling because the mind is deeply attached to familiarity. It finds comfort in routines, predictable reactions, and identities built over many years. Even unhealthy habits can create a false sense of security simply because they are known. But when profound inner change begins, these familiar patterns no longer operate with the same certainty. Behaviors that once felt automatic start feeling forced. Reactions that once defined you lose their strength. It is as though an unseen force is gently loosening the grip of an old version of yourself. This process is rarely dramatic in the beginning. Instead, it unfolds through subtle moments of awareness. You may catch yourself responding differently to situations that previously triggered anger, fear, or anxiety. Conversations that once pulled you into endless conflict no longer hold the same emotional power. People who once influenced your decisions begin losing their control over your thoughts. At the same time, habits that no longer reflect your deeper values become increasingly difficult to maintain. What once felt natural now feels exhausting, creating an inner tension between who you have been and who you are becoming. The conscious mind often resists this transition because it interprets uncertainty as danger. It wants to preserve familiar structures, even when those structures no longer support growth. Yet the unconscious recognizes that lasting transformation requires more than learning something new. It requires releasing what has become outdated. Every belief rooted in fear, every role adopted to gain approval, and every pattern repeated without awareness must eventually be questioned. This is not a punishment, but a necessary process of psychological renewal. Many people mistake this period for losing themselves because the identity they relied upon begins to dissolve. In reality, they are not becoming less of who they are. They are gradually shedding layers that were shaped by old expectations, unresolved fears, and unconscious conditioning. As these layers fall away, space is created for qualities that have always existed beneath them: greater authenticity, deeper resilience, clearer purpose, and a quieter confidence that no longer depends on external validation or familiar routines. As a significant transformation approaches, your emotional world often becomes more intense than usual. Feelings that seemed quiet for years may suddenly rise to the surface with unexpected strength. One day you may feel deeply inspired and hopeful, and the next you may experience uncertainty, sadness, or restlessness without any obvious external cause. Many people interpret this emotional intensity as a sign that something is going wrong. They believe they are becoming unstable or losing control. Yet in many cases, these emotions are not evidence of failure. They are evidence that the inner world is becoming active, bringing hidden experiences into awareness so they can finally be understood rather than avoided. For much of life, the mind develops ways to keep painful memories, disappointments, and unresolved fears beneath the surface. This allows a person to continue functioning, but it does not make those experiences disappear. They remain stored in the unconscious, quietly influencing choices, relationships, and self-perception. When genuine transformation begins, these emotional layers can no longer remain hidden. They start moving into consciousness, asking to be acknowledged instead of suppressed. What feels overwhelming is often the release of feelings that have waited years for recognition. This is why periods of emotional intensity frequently arrive before major breakthroughs. The old emotional landscape begins to shift, making room for a healthier and more authentic way of responding to life. You may notice yourself questioning beliefs that once seemed unquestionable or feeling compassion where you once felt resentment. At the same time, emotions you thought had been forgotten may briefly return, not because you are moving backward, but because they are passing through for the final time. Healing is rarely a straight line, and growth does not happen by avoiding discomfort. It happens by allowing truth to replace denial. The temptation during this phase is to distract yourself or search for quick solutions that promise immediate relief, but lasting transformation requires patience. Every emotion carries information about your inner life, and every feeling deserves observation before judgment. When you stop treating your emotions as enemies and begin seeing them as messengers, you develop a deeper understanding of yourself. The very feelings that once seemed like obstacles can become the doorway to greater clarity, emotional maturity, and a stronger connection with the person you are gradually becoming. Perhaps the most overlooked sign that something significant is about to happen is the growing feeling that you no longer belong everywhere you once did. Relationships begin to shift, familiar conversations lose their meaning, and the need for constant noise or approval slowly fades. This experience is often mistaken for loneliness, but there is an important difference between being alone and being prepared. Solitude is not always an absence of connection. Sometimes it is the quiet space where your deepest transformation can finally take shape without the influence of expectations, opinions, or distractions. The mind is constantly shaped by the environments it inhabits. Every conversation, habit, and relationship reinforces a particular version of who you believe yourself to be. As long as everything around you remains familiar, it becomes difficult to recognize how much of your identity has been built in response to others rather than from your own inner truth. When profound change begins, life often creates distance from people, routines, or situations that once defined you. This separation may feel uncomfortable because the old sources of certainty are no longer available, yet that very discomfort creates the silence needed to hear a deeper voice that was previously drowned out by the demands of everyday life. Many people resist this phase because they fear that isolation means rejection or failure. They try to fill every empty moment with distractions, believing that constant activity will remove the uncomfortable feeling within. But transformation cannot be rushed by noise. It requires moments of stillness in which hidden thoughts, forgotten dreams, and authentic desires have room to emerge. In silence, you begin noticing the beliefs you borrowed from others and the expectations you accepted without question. You gradually discover that many of the limits you carried were never truly your own. During this period, your intuition often becomes clearer than your logic. Answers arrive through quiet reflection rather than endless analysis. You begin trusting your inner sense of direction instead of seeking validation from every voice around you. The temporary feeling of standing apart from the crowd is not meant to separate you from life. It is creating the conditions for a stronger, wiser, and more authentic self to emerge, one that is no longer defined by fear, approval, or the need to fit into places that have already served their purpose. As a profound change draws near, something remarkable often begins to happen within you. Decisions that once required endless overthinking start feeling unexpectedly clear. You may sense that a particular path is right before you can fully explain why. Certain places, conversations, or opportunities create an immediate feeling of alignment, while others leave you with a quiet but unmistakable discomfort. Many people dismiss these experiences as imagination or coincidence because they cannot be measured with logic alone. Yet this growing inner certainty often reflects a deeper psychological shift. Your intuition is becoming stronger, not because it suddenly appeared, but because the constant noise that once drowned it out is beginning to fade. For much of life, the conscious mind dominates every decision. It weighs advantages against disadvantages, searches for certainty, and tries to predict every possible outcome. While this analytical process is valuable, it has limits. There are moments when the deepest understanding does not come from reasoning, but from an inner awareness that gathers countless subtle impressions beyond conscious thought. The unconscious mind continuously observes patterns, emotions, memories, and experiences that never fully reach awareness. When you become more connected to this deeper level of yourself, intuition emerges as a quiet guide rather than an impulsive reaction. This does not mean every feeling should be followed without reflection. Genuine intuition is different from fear, wishful thinking, or emotional impulse. Fear demands immediate action to escape discomfort. Wishful thinking promises effortless rewards without evidence. Intuition, however, remains calm. It does not shout or create panic. It quietly returns again and again, gently pointing in the same direction even when circumstances remain uncertain. Its consistency is what makes it trustworthy. As your intuition grows stronger, you may also notice an increased sensitivity to dreams, symbols, recurring thoughts, or moments of unexpected clarity. Insights often arrive when your mind is relaxed rather than when you are forcing answers. A simple walk, a period of silence, or an ordinary conversation may suddenly reveal a truth you had been searching for over many months. These moments are not interruptions to your journey. They are signs that your inner world is becoming more integrated, allowing wisdom that was once hidden beneath doubt and distraction to rise naturally into conscious awareness. One of the most misunderstood moments before a major breakthrough is the sudden increase in resistance. Just when you believe you are making progress, obstacles seem to multiply. Doubts become louder, unexpected setbacks appear, motivation weakens, and the temptation to return to old habits grows stronger than ever before. Many people interpret this as a sign they are moving in the wrong direction. They assume that if the path were truly meant for them, it would become easier with every step. Yet meaningful transformation rarely follows such a simple pattern. The greatest resistance often appears not at the beginning of change, but just before the old version of yourself finally loses its hold. The mind is designed to protect what feels familiar, even when that familiarity limits growth. It does not easily surrender identities, beliefs, or behaviors that have provided a sense of security for years. As you begin moving toward a more authentic way of living, the unconscious naturally pushes back. Old fears return with surprising intensity. You may question your abilities, your purpose, or even the progress you have already made. Thoughts that seemed defeated long ago suddenly reappear, creating the illusion that you have gone backward. In reality, these patterns are surfacing because they are making one final attempt to preserve the life they once controlled. This inner conflict is not a sign of weakness. It is evidence that genuine change is taking place. Every significant transformation requires leaving behind something that once defined you, and the mind rarely releases those attachments without resistance. The closer you come to a new level of awareness, the more clearly you begin to see the fears that have quietly shaped your decisions. Instead of hiding in the background, they stand directly before you, asking whether you will continue obeying them or finally move beyond them. People who experience lasting growth are not those who never feel resistance. They are the ones who recognize it without allowing it to determine their direction. They understand that discomfort is often the price of expansion, not the proof of failure. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to strengthen courage. Every doubt becomes a chance to deepen self-awareness. And every obstacle reveals qualities that could never emerge in a life built entirely on comfort. The moment resistance reaches its greatest intensity is often the moment you are standing closest to the transformation you have been unknowingly preparing for all along. The final sign is perhaps the quietest, yet it is often the most powerful. You begin feeling an undeniable pull toward a future you cannot clearly describe. There is no complete plan, no guarantee of success, and no logical explanation that satisfies every question in your mind. Yet something within you keeps urging you forward. It may appear as a growing desire to learn a new skill, leave an environment that no longer feels right, begin a meaningful project, or pursue a path that once seemed impossible. To the outside world, these impulses may appear irrational, but on the inside, they carry a sense of truth that refuses to disappear. Most people spend their lives waiting until every uncertainty has been removed before taking action. They believe confidence comes first and movement follows. In reality, transformation often works in the opposite direction. The deeper mind recognizes possibilities long before the conscious mind can explain them. What you experience as an inner calling is often the result of countless observations, experiences, and insights gradually forming beneath awareness. Long before your thoughts become clear, your inner world has already begun preparing for the next stage of your life. This inner pull is usually accompanied by an increasing dissatisfaction with remaining where you are. It is not driven by impatience or restlessness, but by the quiet realization that continuing to live exactly as before would require ignoring an important part of yourself. The familiar may still feel comfortable, yet it no longer feels alive. You begin sensing that growth demands movement, even if the destination has not fully revealed itself. The challenge is that this stage asks for trust before certainty. The mind wants visible proof, while the deeper self asks for willingness. Every meaningful journey begins with steps taken before the entire road becomes visible. As you honor this quiet inner direction, opportunities, relationships, and experiences often begin aligning in unexpected ways. What first appeared to be uncertainty gradually reveals itself as preparation, and what once felt like an invisible pull becomes the unmistakable beginning of a life shaped by greater purpose, authenticity, and inner conviction rather than fear or habit. If you recognize these signs in your own life, resist the temptation to dismiss them as random events or temporary emotions. Transformation rarely announces itself with certainty. It begins quietly, beneath the surface, where old identities loosen their grip and a new way of seeing yourself gradually takes shape. The moments that feel most confusing are often the moments that carry the greatest potential. What appears to be uncertainty may actually be the space where your next chapter is being created. Remember, profound change does not happen because the world suddenly becomes different. It happens because your relationship with the world begins to change. The experiences that once defined you lose their power. The fears that once controlled your choices become visible instead of invisible. The patterns that kept you repeating the same story begin to break apart, making room for a life that reflects who you truly are rather than who you believed you had to be. The greatest mistake is not feeling uncertain. The greatest mistake is turning back simply because the path ahead cannot yet be fully seen. Every meaningful transformation asks for courage before it offers clarity. It asks you to trust your growth before the evidence appears. Just as dawn begins while the sky is still dark, your future often begins taking shape long before your eyes can recognize it. Perhaps the very struggles you have been trying to escape are not obstacles standing in your way. Perhaps they are the final lessons preparing you for a reality larger than anything your old self could have imagined. Every challenge, every unexpected ending, every quiet moment of doubt may have been guiding you toward a deeper understanding of yourself. So, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" consider asking, "What is this experience preparing me to become?" That single question has the power to transform fear into curiosity, confusion into awareness, and uncertainty into purpose. If this message resonated with you, share in the comments which of these signs you've experienced most recently. Your story may encourage someone else who is standing at the edge of their own transformation. And if you want to continue exploring the hidden patterns of the human mind, the psychology of personal growth, and the deeper meaning behind life's most mysterious experiences, be sure to subscribe and join us for the next journey. Until then, stay aware, stay patient, and remember that the biggest changes in life almost always begin long before the world can see them.